In this video, we will try to understand Angular providers, and we'll try to understand various entities around Angular providers like values, constants, factory, provider, etc. and so on. Now, if you tell me to define Angular provider in one sentence, or if you tell me that what is the use of Angular provider in one sentence, then I can tell that Angular provider provides a roadmap of good Angular coding. It provides a roadmap of how to go and modularize your Angular code, of how to go and layer your Angular code. So I feel that from that perspective, this is a very, very important topic, because as I've said previously, it is not about completing the project, but it is completing the project with a proper architecture. So if you do not know Angular providers, then I feel personally that your code structure won't be so much organized. Okay, so with all respect, now that we have understood the importance of Angular provider, I'm going to go and dedicate a complete 1 hour to Angular provider. In this 1 hour, what I will do is, first I will go and start with a small example, and I will show that how the code is organized, and then I will go and implement Angular provider, and then you can see that how Angular provider goes and structures your code properly. So the first 5-10 minutes, let me set an example, let me come up with the example, and then the rest of the video, we will see that how we can go and use Angular provider and make our code modular and layered. Now, because this video revolves around organizing your code, creating good modular code, and it revolves around creating a proper architecture and structure, the first thing what you need to understand is how to implement proper object-oriented programming concepts in JavaScript. So what I would suggest is that before even you start with this video, please go ahead and see the 1 hour video where we have explained different concepts of JavaScript like closures and how to implement inheritance, abstraction, encapsulation in JavaScript. So please go through these two videos before even you start this video, because in this video, when I start coding closures, when I start coding inheritance, I won't be explaining the concepts again. Right. So let us go and start with a small module, and then we will see the importance of Angular provider. Now let us say that we want to create a small project, and in this project we want to go and create a simple customer screen which has first name, last name, then the amount and so on, right? So I want to go and create a simple UI which actually goes and inserts a customer data into database, right? So the first thing what I will do is, before even I go and create the UI for the customer, let me go and first create a proper class for that customer, right? So you can see that already I have in the scripts folder I have Angular. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and create a new folder in this. So I'm going to go and create a new folder. I will say that this folder will have my business components, right? And this Angular code, let me go and create a new folder here, and let me say Angular, right? So the Angular code, the Angular technical code will go into Angular, and my business components will actually go into this, right? So in this, let me go and add a new item. So let me go and add a JavaScript file here called as customer.js, right? Save this all. So let us go ahead and create a simple customer class. I know that I'm using the word class, but a class in JavaScript is actually a function. So whenever I say class in JavaScript, I mean a function, right? So let me go and create a simple customer class, and this customer class will have 3 properties: first name, last name, and amount, right? And let me also go and create a simple validate function, and this validate function will actually go and validate the customer class, right? Now, so when anyone wants to enter customer data into database, right, I want that the first name, the last name, and amount everything is compulsory. So let me go and write down a logic here saying, okay, if this dot first name dot length is equal to 0, then return false. In the same way, if the last name is not given by the end user, again return false. And if the amount is not provided, again return back false. And if everything is provided well, then just say that this is proper and return true. So I have a very simple customer class here. Again, when I say class means function, function means class in JavaScript. Okay, and it has first name, last name, and amount, and it has a very simple method called as validate, which actually goes and validates the customer data. Now let me go and put one more property here, that is a phone number property. I'll tell you that why I have put a phone number property later. Now let us go and complicate this scenario. Now let us say that we have different kinds of customers. Let us say we have two more types of customers. One is the customer which we can term it as a walk-in customer, and the other one is a lead. A walk-in customer just comes to your shop, he buys something and he goes away. So in that case, I'm not interested to note down his first name and last name, but yes, he wants a small receipt of how much is the amount paid, right? Then the second kind of customer who is coming to me is the lead. Now a lead is not exactly a customer, but he's a person who comes to the shop, he inquires about a lot of things, but he does not buy from me. So for a lead, I just want a phone number. That's why I have put a phone number property. So in other words, now we are talking about two more types of customers. So one is the walk-in customer, and the other one is a lead, right? So for a walk-in customer, we just need the amount. So I'm going to go and say that for the walk-in customer, everything remains same, the first name, the last name, amount, property, everything is same. But when we do the validation, we just need the amount. That's it. While for a lead, I just need the phone number. So I'll say for a lead type of customer, a lead is not exactly a customer, but a person who is a lead, for him I just want the phone number, so that next time if I want, I can make a call to him for making sales. But now whatever is the type of customer, at the end of the day the properties are all same for each one of them. So in other words, this walk-in customer will inherit from the customer, as well as the lead will inherit from the customer, and only thing which they will override is the validate method, right? So over here I will say, now in order to do inheritance in JavaScript, remember I have already explained that in the learn JavaScript video. So for that, what we have to do is we have to use the prototype property, and we will say that only the validate method is different, but the rest of the things all are same. So using this prototype, we get all the properties which are there in the customer class, but the validate method will be invoked what is there in the walk-in customer. In the same way, for the lead as well, I will say, okay, lead dot prototype is equal to new customer. So again, for lead, the same thing. So in other words, now we have a customer class, and the customer class is inherited to create two different kinds of customer. One is a walk-in customer, and the other one is a lead. Now let us say that the project also has some more requirements here, like for example, whenever the first name and last name is displayed on the UI, it has to be displayed in a uppercase. Whenever you display the amount, it has to be rounded up to either 2 decimals or either 3 decimals, and this has to be parameterized, right? So in other words, there are some things which we need around the customer class, like rounding up, uppercase, lowercase, etc. So what I will do is I will go and create these logics into a common class called as the utility class. This utility class, you can think about a class which has things like rounding up, uppercase, doing some common validations, so that I can use this utility class with a customer class, or tomorrow with a supplier class, or tomorrow with any other business components, right? So let me go ahead here in this project, and let me go and create one more folder here called as the utility folder. And in this utility folder, I will go and add a new class here called as utility.js file. And in this class, we will go and create, in this file, we will go and create a class called as utility. And in this utility class, you can see that I have put some common functions like making uppercase, rounding up, and so on, right? So basically at this moment, if you see, I have 3 folders. The first one is where my Angular technical code is, that is a framework code of Angular, which I get from online. Second one is the folder, which has the business components like customer, supplier, and so on. And then I have the utility class, which has common functions, which will be used inside the customer class or inside a supplier class, and so on. Now this project also has a lot of parameters, parameters which define how the application should run. Now some of these parameters are constant, so I'm going to go and add a constant.js file. So some of the parameters, once they start running, their value will not change, and some of the parameters value will change. So I'm going to go and add one more JavaScript file here saying values.js. So basically, for example, the constant parameters are, so I'll just say project constants. For example, what should be the rounding up of the decimal? Should it be 2 places or 3 places, right? So I'm going to go and define here some constant parameters. So I'll say, okay, rounding should be 2 decimals. Also, I would like to define here, one is rounding, one is what is the currency. So I'll say, okay, currently the currency is rupees, so currency is rupees, right? So you can see that these are the constants, and I don't expect them to change actually. So project constants. At the same time, I have some project values. Okay, project values are something which can change. So let us say at this moment, we have some parameter values like error messages. So I'll say, okay, success message and error messages. So if there is an error message, then display that this is error, and if there is a successful message, then display it's successful, right? So there are 2 kind of parameters which my program will take. One is the constants and the other one is the values. The values can change, but the constants will not change when the program starts, right? So if I now see, I have the business components, I have the necessary parameters which will run my application, I have the utility class which will have the common things, right? So actually I have created all the things, and it is all in place. Now it is time to go and create a UI and consume all of these components and make my UI running, right? So let us go ahead, and we are going to use Angular for it. So the first thing is we need to go and use Angular in a project. So I'm going to go and drag and drop AngularJS. Now the next thing is we also need to go and create a UI, which will give the first name, last name, amount, and phone number, etc., right? So let me go and put up a UI code here. What does this UI code have? Let me just run this and show it to you. In this UI code, I have created 4 text boxes. So you can see that there are 4 text boxes here which take in the first name, it takes in the last name, the amount, and the phone number. And there is one more drop down here, which I have created, which the end user can select, saying that okay, does he want to use a simple customer, or does he want to use the lead, or does he want to use the walk-in logic. So he can actually go and pick and choose what kind of customer he wants to enter, right? And there's a click button which will actually go and execute the validate logic. So basically what I've done is I have created an extremely simple screen which has 4 text boxes and drop down and a button. So now we need to go and take all our components. That means we need to go and take the business components, we need to go and take the utility components, we need to go and take the constants, we need to go and take the values and bind it with this UI. So in other words, now the Angular controller, what we are going to create here, will take all of these things and bind it to the UI. So let me go and create a very simple Angular controller. What I will do is I will not name the Angular controller as controller. Let me name it as binder, right? So basically this binder code here will take all of these values, use Angular and bind it to the UI. So basically the binder will bind the model. The model is nothing but at this moment the customer object. The binder will also go and take the utility class, utility. So we'll go and create the utility object. So utility, right? The binder will also take the constants. So whatever are the project constants, he will go and create the object of the project constants. He'll also need the project values. Right, so this binder here will take all of these components and bind it to the UI down below. So the first text box here will bind to the model dot customer name. The second text box will bind to the last name, the third one to the amount, and so on. Now if you see, we also have a drop down here, which is the type of the customer, and depending on the type of the customer what is selected, you'd like to go and select the appropriate customer object. So what you'd like to do here is you'd like to also go and create a type, and you'll say that okay, the type, if it is simple, then you will create a customer object, but if it is walk-in, you will create a walk-in customer object. If it is a lead, you will create the lead customer object, right? So for that, what you will do is you will say $scope dot watch the type, and when the type changes, depending on the value, you will now make a decision. So you'll say here, if value is equal to simple, then you will create the model as a simple customer object. Else, if the value is a lead, then you will create a lead customer object, and finally if the value is a walk-in, you will create a walk-in customer object. Now there is a problem here. The problem is as follows. If you see at this moment, we have the HTML UI. The HTML UI is connected with the binder class here, and this binder class using Angular is connecting with the model, it is connecting with the utility class, it is connecting with the project constants, values, and so on. But in that process, this binder class is getting heavily coupled with all the objects. For example, you can see over here, when a new customer type is added, I need to go and add one more if condition here, which is really not a good idea. So I would like that, this, if by any means, this binder class can be decoupled from all these entities like utility, customer, constants, values, and so on, then that would really improve the architecture of a project, right? So if you see at this moment, we have the customer class, which is there. We have the values, we have constants, we have utilities. So we have 4 different kinds of entities, which are tightly coupled with the binder class or the binder object, right? So how about it? So rather than the binder object going and creating the object of these guys, how about something like this? If somebody can say that, okay, I will provide you the model, I will provide you the utility class, I will provide you the constants, and I will provide you the values. And what you do is you just use them. You don't worry about this new keyword. Don't worry about this, that there is a utility class at the back end. Don't worry about what kind of constants are coming in. Don't worry about what kind of values are coming in. You just go and do the binding, and the injection of this object will be done by someone else. So if you really think logically, we have the binder. The binder is actually connecting all these objects to the UI, right? So if we can go and create a separate layer in between called as the provider. This provider, as the name says, it will provide things like the model, it will provide things like the utility classes, it will provide constants, it will provide values, and so on. So let us go ahead and create a provider. So I'm going to go and create a provider class. Let me do one thing. Let me create a folder here. So let me create a folder called as provider, and in this let me go and create a class called as the provider.cs. Always I use the word class because of my old C# habits, but remember it's a function at the end of the day. Provider.js. So this provider.js file will actually go and provide things to the Angular controller, which I have named it as binder. Now before we go and start writing the provider code over here, also what we have to do is we have to also create the app object and the controller object, right? So let me go here and create the app object. So angular dot module my app, and where controller my app dot controller. So at this moment our name of controller is binder. So binder and binder. Now this provider of Angular provides configuration data, provides configuration information. Remember, this utility, this constant, this values, the model, everything is actually configuration for the Angular controller, right? So the provider of Angular actually provides configuration information through the app object. So if you want to go and use the provider, you have to say my app dot config. Config means provide the configuration using the Angular provider, right? So you can see here the most basic code for provider. You have to say my app, a capital, dot config, and in this, via this provider, now you can go and say provide constants, provide values, provide static or utility objects, global objects, provide your business object, provide your model, right? And what I will do is, rather than putting this code over here, I'm going to go and put this code into this provider.js so that it is separate and everything is not looking cluttered in the UI. And what I will do is, definitely I need the provider. So I will go and put the provider.js over here. Because the provider.js needs the my app, that's why I put provider.js down below. Great. So let me just reiterate what we are trying to do. We have the user interface. So this is our user interface. This user interface is binded by this controller called as binder, and this controller needs configuration config, which is provided by Angular provider. And here Angular provider will go and provide the constants, it will provide the values, it will provide the utility. So tomorrow, if anything else has to be provided, we need to go and just change over here. We do not need to touch the UI and the controller, right? So the whole point of this provider is to provide configuration and to decouple the controller, the Angular controller, from various entities of your system. So let us start with constants here. So I'll say here $provide dot constants. So project constants. So I'll say here provide the project constants. Now remember, in the UI we have set constants, right? So we have to say here constants. The first parameter here is the variable name from where the injection will happen. So at this moment the injection will happen through the constants, right? So the constants is the parameter name in the binder, so that you need to specify first here. And what you want to inject, so this is what I want to inject right over here, is provided in the second parameter, right? In the same way we will say $provide dot values. So you can look at, this provider is providing things to your controller, right? Values. So I want to inject in this values, I want to inject the project values. I'll come to the difference between constants and values later on, but for now let us do the injection. Next, I also want to go and inject the utility object, and just before we move ahead, this is singular constant and not a constant, so it is singular constant value. Now when we want to inject utility objects, we want to inject it in a global way. Means in the UI, if I have two ng controllers, right? So let us say I have in one UI I bind the binder, and again I bind the binder, right? So I would like to see that the service should be global to both of them. Normally what happens internally, this ng controller instance is different from this ng controller, right? But when I say I want to inject classes or objects like utility, I would love to see them that there is one global instance which is shared between multiple ng controllers in the same page. So when you say $provide.service, when you say that you want to inject a service is a global object. Remember, in one of the previous videos we did discuss about service and factory. So this service is the same thing what we discussed. The only thing is that at this moment I am providing it via the provider, right?
So we are injecting constants, we are injecting values, we are injecting services, which are nothing but they are global objects. Now the final thing what we want to inject in our controller is the model, but the injection of this model is quite complex. You can see that we have different kinds of customer model. We have a simple customer class, then we have a walk-in customer, and then we have a lead, and so on, right? So basically we need to actually go and create a factory which will decide that which customer object should come out, and that we should actually expose via the provider. So over here we cannot just go and expose a single object. We have 3 classes to be invoked, and all of those 3 classes have to be created situationally. Again, I'm repeating the word situationally. So in other words, we need to actually have a factory. So to that factory we go and we say, okay, I want a walk-in customer, he will give you a walk-in customer. I will say, okay, I want a lead, he will give me a lead. So let me go here and create a simple factory. So let me go and create a factory in a separate class. So again, a factory for me is a provider, right? It is a provider. Only thing is that here he is going to go and provide me customer classes. So let me go and add this over here, and feel free to rename these folders, work around them. The only point what I'm trying to communicate here is there should be a proper structure into your JavaScript code. So I will name this as customer factory. Okay, this customer factory, I'll name it as factory customer. This I will create it as a closure. Okay, I'm going to use JavaScript closures here. In case you are new to closures, I would suggest to go and watch the first video, which I have specially created for C# developers, where I have explained what exactly is the importance of closure. So I will go here and say create a private method called as _create, and I'm going to go and pass what kind of customer I want to create. So I'll say here, if you pass me a simple customer, I will throw you a simple customer, right? New customer. Else if you pass me a walk-in, I will throw you something, or else I will throw you something out. So basically a factory is nothing but it is a kind of a class which actually takes the responsibility of creating an object, right? So I'll say here, if you pass me walk-in, I will create a walk-in customer, or else I will create a lead, new lead. Right, now remember this is a closure, so I have to say here return, I have to make it public, right? So I have to say here return this _create as create. Now the provider will actually use this class to create the type of customer. So in other words, from the provider, I need to now go and expose this factory. Now let me make a statement here. This factory here at the end of the day is nothing but a provider. As I've told you, that provider, as the name says, it provides things. So this factory here is providing me customer, it is providing me walk-in customer, it is providing me what is this length? Sorry, a lead, right? A lead type of customer. So now if the provider has to expose this object out, it is nothing but at the end of the day it is a provider, right? Because that factory customer is nothing but it is a provider. So you can see here, through the provider I can literally expose out anything. I can provide constants, I can provide values, I can provide service, a global object, or else I can provide a provider who will actually provide objects like factory customer. So we can think about a provider as a factory, right? A factory which actually exposes out other factory, or probably it will have a factory code himself in himself as well, right? So over here, what I will do is I will go and create the factory customer object, what I have. And you can see that there is a $get function here. This $get function is exposing out the create of this factory outside, right? So basically this whole thing will get injected into this model over here. So we have this model here. That means that this is not a model directly, this is not the object directly, it is a factory of customer. Okay, so over here I will say take the factory of customer and create what is there in the type. So if the type has a customer, it will take a customer. If the type has, so you can see here, if the type has simple, so if it is simple, it is a customer. If it is a walk-in, so let us check our drop down. If it's a lead, it is something. If it is a walk-in, it is something. So basically this factory over here will take whatever is the type. So by default the type I have kept it as simple, right? But this type can change depending on the drop down value, right? So when the drop down value changes, it will actually go and manipulate this type. And here, rather than my controller talking directly with the model, right, with what kind of strongly type object we have, I will say that model is equal to factory customer dot create $scope dot type. Okay, so in other words, whenever the value changes, he will again internally call the factory customer, and the factory customer will go and inject the object. So you can see here we have injected 4 different kinds of objects. I'll just put it down, and all of these objects are injected by the provider, and in this way the provider decouples your binder code or your controller code from the backend objects. So this guy over here is a factory which is injected. This person over here is a global object, a utility object, global utility object. Both of these are constants, so constants and values. So one is a constant, another is a value. So you can see that from a provider I can inject literally anything, and I can decouple my controller from the backend entities. So now that we have completed our code here, the next thing now is to go and start doing the binding. So we have binded the customer name. Let us bind the last name. So the last name was last name. This was first name. So let us start putting the ng models everywhere. Amount, also if you remember, the customer class has a validate method. So let us go ahead and call the validate method, and what we will do is we're going to go and display the messages, the error messages as well as the success messages from the values. So if you remember, in the values we had a success message and we had an error message. So basically what we will do is we will use the success message and error message to display the values. Okay, so and this validate method I will call in my button click. So I'll say here ng click and validate. So now let us go and run the application. So if you remember what logic we had written very quickly, what we had done is the following. If he is a normal customer, then you need to provide the first name, last name and amount. So this is a normal customer. So if I don't provide him the amount, it says this is error. And this value, this is error, is coming from the messages, from the values messages, right? Remember we had created the values messages, it is coming from here, right? And if I provide a proper amount, then it shows me it is successful. If I go and select a lead, now for a lead, the only thing what is needed is the phone number, right? If you remember, for a lead, what we need is only the phone number. So for some reason, if I provide everything and if I don't provide the phone number, it says that this is error, right? So if I provide the phone number, I don't need anything else, neither the name, it's a lead, okay, and says it's successful. Can you see that? So basically now you can see our factory class is operating properly. At the time I select the drop down, the time the drop down change happens, it fires a watch. The watch goes and goes to the factory provider and says, for this type, what kind of customer should you inject? And the factory then says, okay, I will inject a customer, I will inject walk-in or lead or anything else. Also, let us go and display the values. So I would like to go and display the first name somewhere down below. But when I display this first name, I want to display it in a capital way. So remember, in the utility class, we had some functions. So I'll say here utility. Remember, the utility is getting injected via the provider, right? So I'll say here utility dot make uppercase. In the same way, I would like to also display the customer amount. So I'll say display me model dot amount, and I would like to go and round up to two digits. So if you again remember, we had a utility function for it. So let me again go and use the utility function, that is round up. So I'll say I would like to round up this to 2 places or 3 places. And remember, where this value is provided for 2 places and 3 places, it is provided in the constants. In the constants, we have something called as rounding, right? So I'll go and say here constants dot rounding. So the utility class, actually is global, throughout multiple controllers on the same page. So if I now go and say a 12.23, why isn't it rounding? Constants dot rounding. So let us see here. Rounding is 2, value, for some reason this rounding is not happening. Let me check. You can see that it is displaying me, but he is not displaying me the value but not the decimals. So we need to check. Let us check. Actually it is here project constants, so it is project constants dot rounding. Okay, so that was a mistake. So now the rounding should work. So 12.23, you can see now it is rounding to 2 digits, right? So depending on what kind of parameters my application is having, it is trying to follow that. Great. Now I would like to go and tailor some of these providers. So if I see over here at this moment, I have a provider for constants, I have a provider for values, there is a provider for utility and factory and so on. I would like to go and customize these providers. For example, let us say I really like the values, but I would like to go and say, is it possible to change this success message to something saying it is done, right? So basically I would like to go and add some additional behavior over these providers, or I would rather say I would like to go and decorate. I would like to go and take an existing provider and add some more decorations around it. So how we can do that? So for that, for example, now let us say I want to take these values and change the success message. Okay, so for that what we can do is we can go here and say, after the provider is loaded, I will say that I want everything from the provider, but I want to tailor some of those config. So I'll say here config. So over here I would like to go and override. So I would like to go and decorate. So I'll say a $provide dot decorator. So what do you want to decorate and how do you want to decorate? So I would like to decorate the values, the project values. So this project values, now remember that the whole project values actually comes into this delegate. So this delegate is where the complete project values object will come in. So I'll say that in this I want to go and change this success message to saying all's okay. So you can see here what I'm doing is I'm actually taking that project values object and I am changing only the success message, but the error message I'm keeping it as it is, and I will return from here $delegate. Right, so now what will happen is so if I go and run this program, if you see why is it coming successful, it should actually come now. So let us see if this is firing or not. So let me put a debugger here very quickly. What should have now happened is that the success message should actually change. Okay, so let us see that what the problem is. So I'm going to go and load this F12. We also need to debug. So there it is, and all this is running. There is an error. My app is not defined. Oh, the A is capital. Bad of me. Right. Okay. Too much in a hurry. Fail to initialize my app. $provider is not provided. $provider is not provided. $provider. My app.config. This is $provide. Oh gosh. Okay, it is not provider, it is provide. Oh, a lot of errors again. Unknown provider, project values provider, project values. So what is the name in the provider? Oh, it is values. Okay, you have to give the same name. So values, yeah, not project values. Project values is actually named here as a variable. This is values. Okay, values is the name given over here. Right, so that should help out. So I hope that. So now if you see, it's all's okay. So what has happened is, if you see the error, for example, the error message has not changed. It is the same, but the success message has been overridden or has been decorated. So what did the decorator do? The decorator took the values and amended it with some logic, right, with some custom things. So basically, using decorator, you can go ahead and you can decorate constants with something new. You can decorate values, you can decorate service, you can decorate provider, and so on. Now one more point I want to mention here. Using a decorator, you can decorate values, you can modify services, utilities, you can modify provider. You cannot modify constant. I know that just before a second I said you can modify constants. It is wrong. You cannot modify constants. Constants cannot be changed via decorator. Okay, so decorator you will use when you have some existing provider, you want to take 90% things from it, but 10% you want to customize it or you want to add something new. So you can go ahead and use this $provide.decorator, right? Great. So let us review what we have done. Let us review this complete architecture, how it has come up because of the provider. So let us summarize, how provider provides what you call a good roadmap, for creating a decent architecture. So basically, the whole point about Angular is that it helps you to bind the objects and the view, right? And then we said, okay, objects can be of different types. You can have objects which is giving out constants. You can have objects which is giving out values. You can have objects which are utilities. Then you can have factory, who actually creates other objects, right? All of these guys, rather than talking directly with the UI, right, or with the controller, what you will do is you will actually expose them via a provider. And this provider will then provide the necessary objects on demand to the controller, that is to your binder. So in your controller, you can then say that, okay, give me factory, give me utility, give me constants, and you start binding them in your UI. In case you want to go and tailor any provider, you can always go and use the decorator. Remember that decorator can tailor all kinds of providers. Only it cannot tailor is the constants. So it can tailor services, it can tailor factories, it can tailor values, but it cannot tailor constants. So basically, if you look at this whole thing, it is now completely separate and a clean architecture. So you have different types of objects, you have provider which can expose those objects. Then in case you want to go and override the providers, you have decorators, and finally your controller, your binder, which actually binds to the UI. Also, I would like to talk about something very important here. You can also say $provide.factory. This $provide.factory is same as $provide.provider, which I have shown below. Only thing is that in the provider, you have a get function and you can write a lot of custom code, while factory is a smaller version of provider. So provider is more custom. If you want something very customized, you will use a provider. So remember that both of these two things mean the same thing. The factory is like a shortcut, while provider is more customized. Also, I would like to highlight that in one of the previous videos, I have discussed about service and factory. So that is absolutely the same what I've discussed here. Only thing is that at this moment, the service and factory is coming via a central provider of Angular. And I would prefer that rather than using the first method which I've discussed, I would actually provide it via provider, because the right place to put all these things is the provider. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. So in this video, we were trying to understand that how Angular providers can make your architecture better. And I hope that you have enjoyed this video. Thank you so much.